And Jacob's like, what is with you guys? Why can't you just do one thing? Welcome back to Eating the Apple. I'm Jeff.
I'm Chris.
And we're going to continue our conversation that we left off last episode with Genesis chapter 41 and the famine being so widespread that Joseph's family is going to be coming asking for help. And we'll be starting today chapter 42. And we'll jump right in, and they basically say that it's the famine so widespread that Jacob's family has heard that there's grain in Egypt.
Yeah, and it starts with a joke. I love this. I absolutely love it. He's like, why do you just keep looking at each other?
Yeah, exactly.
It's awesome. Oh, it's the first time I've laughed reading this.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, exactly. I love that.
That's great.
So he's like, go down to Egypt and get some grain so that we may live and not die. Did you find anything odd about that phrasing?
Not necessarily. I have a feeling you did, but it does seem odd that he's having to tell his sons this when supposedly this is a relatively common occurrence, a famine and going down to Egypt and buying some grain and bringing it back. Mm-hmm. Obviously this would have been a much greater famine, but it just seems odd that you'd have to tell him.
Yeah. And so but specifically the thing that says live and not die. So I had that hung on me. And I asked Reddit, I asked our Judaism, I said, what is this specific, why is this here like this? And that's when I was referred to the Shabbat.org website, the Bereshit. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing in there about that. But what someone did say later, or what I read later, was that it's not, when they're saying live here, when Jacob's saying mm-hmm. live, he's referring to a standard of living. And when he says not dying, he's literally referring to not dying. He's like, we need grain so that we can maintain this way of life that we're used to.
Oh, so it's not just surviving.
Yeah, exactly. So he's saying, okay. But then again, when he says not die, he's basically saying, look, we have this standard of living that we're used to. The alternative is death. He's like, right. So that's what he's basically not concerned with, like you said, survival. He's like, I want to continue to live kind of the way we have, which is kind of nice. We're kind of rich.
Well, now it seems, he's... how do I want to word it?
1 second.
Yeah.
Come on, bud. You're saying it.
So it seems kind of whiny at this point. Like, it's not, so that we can survive. It's, I want to maintain this. And if I can't, I'll just die. You know what I mean?
And and again, that's that one interpretation. So I'm certainly not saying that's what it's getting at, but
that's true. But that makes it definitely sound whiny.
Yeah.
If I can't have my latte, I'll die.
And that's one thing I'm not sure if, every once in a while, we're given reminders that these folks are affluent and, kind of looked upon with favor in the eyes of mm-hmm. the Lord. Like, I mean, obviously that's the whole story here, but whenever they juxtapose the lives they live with the lives of other folks, it's hard sometimes to remember that these guys are actually doing pretty well. They might not be so ostentatious, but they're noticeably better off than other folks in the area, mm-hmm. right? So whenever he says live, I mean, Jacob came from this type of lifestyle and he is furthering it, received all of the gifts that, get passed down. And this is the life he's continued to live, or he's continued
mm-hmm.
to lead,
Well, I mean, yeah, he did do that, but he also had to work his ass off.
Oh yeah.
At some point he was a spoiled child. And then, he ran off because he was afraid of his brother, and he ended up working for quite a while doing mm-hmm. work. So it's not that he was always, this golden child kind of thing.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. I mean, he put in his 20 years, you might say. So sure enough, the brothers come down, and they come down to Egypt, and they seek an audience with Joseph. I mean, who else? He's the person in charge. He's the one that makes all the decisions. The Pharaoh said so himself.
You would think he would, people would get more low level officials rather than going straight to Joseph, but
yeah,
I mean, I guess
you think story. Especially, that's exactly what I was about to say. But especially since given the charge that Joseph's about to levy at them being spies.
Yeah.
Why is Joseph the one that has to make that determination? You'd think it'd be some functionary below him.
I mean, yeah, but so if it was some other official, they wouldn't have recognized his brothers. and the whole spy thing was just a ruse to get him to do what he wanted him to do.
Yeah,
It's more deception.
that's true. Yeah. And
So actually, that reminds me, and I don't mean to extend this podcast even further because we're taking forever. But I was thinking about it. I was told you I was on the road for a couple hours yesterday, and I was thinking about it, and I'm wondering. Obviously, today we consider lying to be a sin. If you're of the Christian persuasion, you call it a sin. Otherwise, you just say it's wrong to lie. It may be illegal in some situations. Um, but it seems like everything we've read so far that God doesn't consider lying to be a sin if it's for God. Your intention is the motivator behind whether or not you're doing wrong. It's not the lie itself. And I wanted to get your opinion on that.
I think you're spot on. It depends on how you want to define lie. Is it a verbal mistruth, like a verbal intention to deceive, or is it any sort of deception? Because
I would say it would be any deception.
Okay, well, in that case, God not only he almost commands people to lie on his behalf, to deceive,
right.
to withhold information, things like that.
I think that doesn't exactly count though, because this is God. He can do whatever he wants, and he also tells people to murder other people from time to time. So, God's different standard, but just the intention of people here, if they're lying because they think it's for the benefit of God, or it's because it's what God wants me to do, it seems like that's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
I think I would agree. Everybody tells little white lies all the time, and that could be, extension of that. If you're lying for the right reasons, it's not bad, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, we're about to get into the book that kind of lays all this out in Exodus, but it's an interesting thing that God's going to put and Onan to death for spilling their seed on the ground, ostensibly, and yet all of these, monkey shines that his people go through in order to deceive one another, to further their own narrative or what have you, their ruses are, as far as we can tell, fine. And so where's the line drawn? Again, that's the thing that we're going to get into near the end of it, or among the other things in Exodus. But that's that you bring up a very valid point. At this point, it's kind of just it's a story that's playing out. Sometimes God's present, sometimes he isn't. Sometimes he blesses these interactions. Sometimes he's completely inactive and allows things to play out in such a way that you're like, what in the heck is going on here? That's an excellent point. Do you have any thoughts on that? Any way to expound on what his intentions might be, or God's intentions?
No, I have no idea. I was just thinking, because I don't know that I would ever have talked to a Christian previously in my life who would have said that lying is not a sin in any situation. They may say it's a necessary sin sometimes. Sometimes you might have to do it to save your life, save somebody else's life, whatever. It may not always be bad, but it's always a sin. And it just doesn't seem like that's the case up to this point in the text. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I wanted another opinion on that because I don't trust, everything that comes into my head all the time.
You're probably asking the wrong person, but that's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, great. Good question. So more lies. Jacob, or the brothers come to Egypt. They're asking for grain, and Joseph recognizes them as soon as they get there. He's like, "Oh, these are here are my brothers." Now it's been 13 years since I've seen them. The last time they saw me, I was a 17-year-old handsome, fresh-faced boy. But these workers of the field look the same as they always have. Granted, Reuben's 43, and the rest of them are between us in age, but they've done a lot less aging than Joseph has in those 13 years. Right? Joseph has become a man. He went from a boy to a man.
That's true.
Say. And so I don't find this hard to believe that.
I don't either. This next part where he accuses them of being spies, though, we just mentioned it and said, it's necessary for the story to come up, but I don't understand where it comes from. There's no lead into it. There's no explanation. It's just he sees them and he forms this plan and he accuses them of being spies.
It says in the text that he remembers his dreams. Maybe it was just the thing he could think of to make them bow down.
Possibly. I don't know.
Yeah. He remembered his dreams about them and said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see where our land is unprotected." And that's when he said, Okay, he said, no, we're servants to come buy food. We're all the sons of one man. Your servants are honest men. And he said, no, you're spies. You've come to see where our land is unprotected. Again, this reiteration. And then they basically give them their story, give him their story. He says that we're brothers of 12. Our father lives in Canaan. The youngest is back there with our father. And
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just. I remembered the comment that you said about a translator, and I
Mhm.
missed it. And it's not. I haven't read it, so I was going back through and reading, and you said maybe calling them spies is the way to get them to bow down. But it says right here when they arrived, they bowed down to him with their faces to the ground, and
Mm.
that's when he recognized them.
Okay, very good. Okay,
Yeah,
fair enough. Good deal. Okay,
but
and
but where's
so
the translator? Does that come later? Because I thought I
yes,
remembered that.
it comes in their second visit. It comes
Okay.
whenever they're. I think it comes whenever the ruse is about to be revealed that he's like. Whenever I want to say it was Reuben who's willing to give up. No, it's Judah who's willing to give up his life in sacrifice for
Mm-hmm.
Benjamin's. But we'll get to that. So he's like, look, you guys are spies. I don't believe you, but just to basically prove yourselves, that's fine. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a little bit of grain, and but I'm going to keep Simeon. I'm going to keep one of you, and we're going to tie him up, and we're gonna put him in the dungeon. And secretly, Joseph fills their bags with grain and puts the silver back on top, basically so that the first time they check their bags, they'll see the silver, and loaded up their donkeys and sent them on their way back to Canaan. That first night, they opened their bags to see the grain and saw the silver. I'm wondering, do you think there's anything there that they didn't wait till they returned to open their bag? Could they have heard the jangling coins? Were they hungry and wanted to eat some raw grain? Like,
Yeah, I imagine they're probably wanting to eat. If this famine is so severe, they probably, it also could have been that because I don't think you would have put the money directly in the sack with the grain. Possibly, I guess, if you're trying to orchestrate this ruse, you put it in there where it looks like it was hidden or whatever. But it could have been that they were unpacking to set up camp, and they
mm,
found it.
okay, fair enough. Yeah, I like that. So yeah, they're like, oh my god, this is terrible because we've discussed before, Jacob especially, his line is all about paying for what they receive. They're like, if nothing else, pay for what you receive, if at all possible, overpay. That way, there's
Right,
no
right.
question that we appreciate the gesture. And they see the coins and they're like, this is terrible. This isn't good. So they continue on their way the next day. They arrive back in Canaan and they tell their father Jacob what happens. And
Okay. Well, just real quick.
mhm,
So in verses 18 to 20,
mhm.
it says, "Do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you're honest man, like one of your brothers here in state prison, blah, blah, blah." Is he using God as a threat, Or is he saying, I believe in God, and so I'm going to strike you down on God's behalf? Or is he using, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
My first interpretation would be to assume that he's saying, "I like you." I'm assuming they can tell he's at least a Hebrew, don't you think? Or do you think he's been so inculcated into the Egyptian society that he looks like an Egyptian?
well, he's been in Egypt for 13 years, I
Yep.
guess. That's
Yep.
probably enough time to pick up, the accent, the appearance, mannerisms. They're all what's the word I'm looking for? It's culturally similar. They're all, the skin tone. Everybody is, differences, but re- essentially the same. I would assume,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like Europeans are. You can, kind of tell a German from a Spanish person, maybe, but for the most part, no. So it might have been the same kind of thing. It might have had similar features, but I think they probably would have accepted him as Egyptian,
Okay.
especially if he's got Egyptian servants or whatever around him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I'm sure at the very least he's picked up a bit of an accent so that he can.
Yeah, yeah,
They're like, wow, this guy's Hebrew is pretty good.
yeah. Maybe he picked up. Maybe to them it sounded like he picked up a bit of an accent, learning their language instead
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
reverse. Yeah.
But I think maybe it's more that he's like, look, I'm a God fearing person, so you can trust me. He's like,
Would they have known that he meant that God?
I mean, I think at the very least he's trying to communicate that he's doing this under fear of punishment from God. Like, I
Okay.
give you my word on God, on my whatever that means, that
Yeah, I
this will
think with
happen.
the henotheism, as the way I understand it, they would have understood that and accepted it. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe in my God, you believe in yours, and we'll hold our oaths to it. Yeah,
Yeah, precisely.
that makes sense.
So they they're trying. I should say, before the brothers get back to Jacob in Canaan, they do intone God. They say, "What has God done to us?"
I was just about to bring that up. Yeah. They find the silver and they're like, what has God done to us?
Uh-huh.
Uh,
It wouldn't be a story of this line if they don't directly question God.
yeah, but I just struggle to figure out what they would have meant by that. Would they have
Mm-hmm.
thought this was God's direct judgment or that God allowed it? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
does it even
Uh,
matter? I don't know.
let's see. Okay, so if I may, what Rashi says is, "What is this that God has done to us? To bring us to this accusation? For it, the money was not returned except to accuse us falsely." So it's almost as if they realize now that they're subjects to a devious plot to like have them
Mm-hmm.
like have their intentions called into question. Yeah, and so yeah, he's like, clearly this, like, we didn't do this.
Mm-hmm.
They, like, all we've done is be honest arbiters of what our father's intentions are, and yet here we are. God has put this claim upon us that we're spies and devious people.
So, thinking of the overall story, do you think it matters if God did it or allowed it to happen? Which one of those things,
I don't think it mattered. That's so funny because so many times as I read this, I'm questioning if God's capable of stepping in for all these other things that to me seem trivial, or at least have a low barrier to entry for God, then
Mm-hmm.
surely these more important things he could step in for. Well, if he's not going to do that, then that must mean that he being God is this is part of his plan. He
Mm-hmm.
This is just part of the action that he's set in motion. And then whenever those things transpire and the people of the story, the characters, have the same sort of reaction, they're like, well, what the heck is God doing here? I was like, yeah, I was thinking that myself. And then I wonder, am I thinking that because I'm supposed to? Is this text really getting its point across? Like, am I supposed to be questioning God, questioning the people, trying to figure out, am I doing the wrong thing by trying to look for some consistency from the God character? Or is that why the conclusion that's been reached over the last 2 millennia have been God works in mysterious ways? Who are we to question? We don't know. Sometimes he puts silver in your satchel, you know?
I don't know. That seems like such a cop out to me.
Well, of course. I mean, as a non-believer, it's the ultimate cop out. But I'm
Yeah.
wondering if this is the basis of it.
I mean, it could be. I don't know. I'm just trying to think because, according to the story, I don't think it matters if God's directly acted or just allowed it by inaction. But uh, theologically, obviously I'm not a believer. I don't know how to interpret it that in a way like a pastor or a trained person would, but I don't know. It just seems like that could be a problematic thing going forward. I don't know
What, questioning God or wondering?
which way it works. You know what I mean? I
Right.
think if you think that God directly acted, it might color your interpretation of the rest of the Bible or future events in this story even
I completely agree.
differently than the other way. And I'm just curious how much of an effect that would have
I wonder
on
if I'm sorry. Go ahead. How much of an effect it would have on what?
just on the believer, someone who's reading it. Again,
Mm-hmm.
reading it plainly. Someone reading it for the first time, assume that they already believe they've been raised in it, and now they're reading it for the first time to confirm, their own, what they've been brought up in or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
how it would affect them.
Yeah, I
I
see
don't
what
know.
you mean, and I completely agree because it's almost as if the decision's been made for you. It's like you have to believe this if you're going to be able to parse what's happening, and
Right.
if you don't, then there's no answers for you. Like
Yeah.
the only way to get answers that you're seeking is to believe. While we're seeking reasons to believe, those reasons
Right.
not only are not inherent, they are demanded, or they are almost disregarded. Like
Right.
you just believe, you know? Yeah. Very good. I'm glad you asked that question. Let's see. Oh, you know what we didn't mention is that part of the condition for them receiving enough grain to sustain them, the grain that they're asking for, is for them to bring Benjamin back with them. So
Oh yeah, I thought you did mention that. Yeah.
I said that they withheld Simeon as like collateral, but they I didn't mention that they have to bring Benjamin back. So
Mm-hmm.
okay, so let's
Yeah,
see.
which is odd. So one of the things in that Bema podcast, he mentions in this area that this area of the story that um, you know, Joseph's been gone for 13 years and he hasn't sent word to his father. You know, like obviously once he becomes the governor of the land, he's got reason not to, to he wants to stay or whatever. He's got a wife and kids, but even before that, he never tried. He was in charge of the prison. He was in charge of Potiphar's house. He never tried to contact his father.
Right.
And now he's not wanting his father. He's wanting his little brother.
Yeah, that is very
So
interesting.
that is not what the Bema people said. They're the ones that sparked this. They said, why hasn't he contacted his father, or whatever? And then they gave some reason that I don't remember because it was inconsequential and I thought it was wrong. But it did, spark the question to me: why does he want his brother and not his father?
Do you think maybe he's trying to get at Jacob? He's trying to like communicate to Jacob that like,
It doesn't seem that way. It seems like he just wants his brother, and he's going to take his brother in and
hmm,
share his wealth with him or whatever, his position, the benefits of being in Egypt.
hmm.
You know,
Yeah, and I would wonder also if like for whatever. So at the time that he has his firstborn, we're to understand that Joseph is no longer thinking about his family back in Canaan. But up until that point, I don't think it's unreasonable to conclude that he would at least wonder, kind of like what you're saying. Where's my dad? Why doesn't he try to
mm-hmm.
reach me? Maybe I can reach him. Um, at that during that time, during those periods of him questioning that, why we could assume that he's like, man, my brothers must have really done a number on him for
Mm-hmm.
for him to not, and so like his hatred and resentment for his brothers only grow, and maybe I don't know.
I mean, that's possible, but I don't think there's any indication that he actually felt that way about his brothers,
No, I don't. There isn't, as far as I know.
other than immediately, accusing them of being spies.
Yeah, but again, I think that was part of the ruse, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the way it comes across to me.
So the brothers make it back to Canaan,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, we don't know what happened, but Simeon's in jail. We have some grain. The silver that we took there, we still have, and he wants the pharaoh. Do they refer to him as the pharaoh, or I don't know how they refer to him? They're like, we gotta take Benjamin back, and
Said in the NIV it says the Lord who was over the land.
yes, okay, there you go, thank you, yeah. And so he's like,
Yeah, all of
so
them say Lord of the land that I've got pulled up. Sorry.
all of that. No, that's quite all right. Thank you. He's like, so this is what we have to do. We lost Simeon. We have, and we have to take Benjamin back in order to prove that we're not spies. And Jacob's like, what is with you guys? Why can't you just do one thing? Like you, you lost your brother 13 years ago. You lost Simeon now. Simeon, by the way, is 50% of the people that killed an entire village. All the males in a village. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So he's like shackled, and he's like, what you've taken? He's like, guys. So anyway,
Yeah, but also, so before you move on,
yeah,
you talked about them stopping and finding the silver in their sack or whatever. They get home and they're emptying their sacks, and Jacob finds the money, and they're all frightened. Like, oh my God, are they frightened because they're still frightened, or are they discovering this money again? Like,
yeah,
oh, shit.
yeah. And the old in different interpretations of the Bible, it says, I say interpretations, I meant translations. When it uses the word "behold," it's like it's meant to
Yeah.
like invoke a discovery, and
Mm-hmm.
they're like, "Behold, here is this money," and like, yeah, you guys knew it was there. It's almost like you thought, okay, like surely this isn't happening. God put this money in our satchel. Maybe by the time we get home, God will take the money out of the satchel. Like he's just using us as like temporary storage. We're just God's pockets.
And lo, it's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. So Jacob hears the terms that the Lord of the land in Egypt has set forth. And he's like, you guys, what did he say? You've deprived me of my sons, or you've deprived me
So
of my children.
that to me, I wanted to bring up,
Mm-hmm.
sounds very much like he's accusing them of having Joseph killed in the first
Bingo.
place.
Yes, exactly right. I completely agree. I don't mean to say right like that's the case, but
Right,
I
right.
saw that same thing and I was like, like he's finally like, okay, I see what's happening here. You guys are terrible, and you're officially trying to pick each
Mm-hmm.
other off one by one. What brought you to that conclusion? How were you able to how'd you get there?
Well, just the phrasing, and I know this is a translation of a translation, probably of a translation, but it just seems like you have deprived me of my children. It's not
Mm-hmm.
a line in the book; it's a quote in the book, as if he said this.
Mm-hmm.
So it just, that's a very accusatory statement,
Mm-hmm.
and he specifically calls out Joseph is no more.
Yeah.
And now he's assuming Simeon is no more because he's gone and they have their silver. And now you want to take Benjamin too. So it's very accusatory.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Reuben, his firstborn, said, "You know what, Dad?" He's like, "You're right, but here I am. I'm going to try to." And so remember that Reuben, for his part, has recognized the role that he's played so far, at least somewhat. Like he's one of two people who have said in the text, "I don't like what's happening here." He's done nothing to completely stop it. Maybe there's nothing he could do, given that this is God's will.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, you know what? You can put both of my sons to death if I don't bring them back to you. Entrust him to my care, and I will bring him back. Referring to Benjamin. Like,
So is he doubling down on this, so to speak, to clear his own name for his own, like
transgressions.
soul?
Yeah.
Or is he just trying to get out of the situation and this is the easiest way?
Or
Like,
is he tempting God? He's
yeah, I could.
he's like, I don't know what role I'm playing in this, but I commend my souls to the sword, my sons to the sword. If I don't bring Benjamin back.
I think that might be a bridge too far, but
Okay.
I could see how that might be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I
No,
think I would need more to say I think that that's likely, but
yeah. But yeah, he definitely feels some guilt, and whether he wants to exonerate his name or just to mollify the guilt that he feels,
mm-hmm.
I do think that that's part of it. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you can put both of my sons to death if I don't bring him back. And Jacob said,
But not Israel. We're back to Jacob again.
"Yeah, has he been referred to as Israel in this chapter? It's been Jacob's whole time.
I
Hasn't it?
think he might have been once. It might have been the last chapter.
Yeah, I forgot that we're supposed to be keeping up with that.
I forgot to, but it
But
just stood out to me again.
yeah, but yeah, Jacob said, "My son will not go down there with you. His brother is dead, and he's okay." Interesting. So he
He's the
does.
only one left.
Yep. He thinks that Joseph is dead. If harm comes to him on the journey you're taking, you will bring my gray head down into the grave in sorrow.
But also, I think it's funny. We talked about how it's just okay. It's perfectly normal to have a favorite child. Um, he is the only one left. Kind of sounds like he's the only one that matters that's left.
100%.
The other son of my favorite wife, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
No, that's how I see it too. So that's the end of chapter 42. In 43, they begin their second journey. That's when they're going to be heading down.
mm-hmm.
Jacob eventually comes around and said, I guess they'd eaten all the grain that they brought back. And it's crazy what hunger will do to you. He said, "Go back and get us a little bit more food." And Judah reminded him, he said, "Look, we will. We tried, but you weren't willing to accept the Lord's terms. So
Mm-hmm.
unless Benjamin comes with us, we're not going to see," it says, "but if you will not send him," referring to Benjamin, "we will not go down, because this man said to us, you will not see my face again," Joseph in this case, "unless your brother is with you." And then
Mm-hmm.
Israel asks.
But also, this kind of goes to the thing we mentioned earlier too. Why is Joseph is over all of this? He could stop them from receiving the grain. So if they don't see his face, they don't get food.
Yeah.
Which again, I think is a little absurd given his status in the in the hierarchy. But it plays into that. If they don't go back, they're not going to have enough food.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And so then, according to the text, Israel asks, "Why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man you had another brother? The man questioned us closely about ourselves and our family. Is your father still living? Do you have another brother?" We simply answered his questions. How are we to know that he would say, "Bring your brother down here"? And the next verse, "Then Judah said to Israel, his father, 'Send the boy with me, and so that we and you and our children may live and not die.'" Basically throwing his words back in his face, right?
Mm-hmm.
"I myself will guarantee his safety." I've already seen how you reacted when Reuben swore that he would kill his two sons. but let me be personally responsible for him. If I don't bring him back to you and send him before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life. This is the first instance of Judah offering himself as a sacrifice to Benjamin.
Mm-hmm.
As it is, if we hadn't delayed, we could have already gone and returned twice.
Yeah, he's got to get that last little jab in. Quit your bitching and let us go.
Yeah. Oh, my son, just come on. All right. Okay. So he reluctantly agrees. He's like, okay, you can go, but send him some of our best stuff. He's like balm, myrrh, honey, what else? Spices, pistachio nuts.
He's worried about his, the one son that matters. So he's trying to, pad the envelope a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And then, but also somehow they're in the midst of this terrible famine, and yet they still have pistachio nuts and almonds. This is clearly they have a way of life. They have a
right.
They want a perfectly balanced meal. They don't want to just survive.
Yeah, well, they want to save these things. They want to eat mostly the grain that they're buying, and then these other things are just accents, and you don't want to run out of the accents.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. All right. Now, let me ask you what you think of verse 14. May God Almighty grant you mercy before that man, so that he will let your other brother and Benjamin come back with you. As for me, if I'm bereaved, I am bereaved. Is he basically saying he's letting Judah take charge? He's like, when he says if I'm bereaved, I'm bereaved. What does that mean?
It sounds to me like he's saying, I give up. He's like, fine, have it your way. I think a believer would say that he's putting it in God's hands, but it doesn't come across that way to me. It seems like he's just given up. He's saying, okay, fine. If we got to have the food to eat, then you've got to go get it.
Yeah, exactly right. And I wonder if like the repetition of bereaved, I'm wondering if that has any special meaning, or if it's simply that he's, like you said, he's just given up. He's like, whatever. It is what it is. There's nothing I can do. These are the man's terms, so I'm willing to submit to these terms in order to maintain our lifestyle. The men took the gifts and twice the amount of silver. That's because they offered silver the first time. They returned with it. Jacob's like, that's not my silver. Get that out of here. Another portion, a similar amount of portion of silver, and this time to buy the grain. And they travel down to Egypt. They get to they meet with Joseph, and he sees that Benjamin's with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, all right, take these men inside, slaughter a goat, and prepare a feast. They're scared because the silver
because they're going. Well, they're scared because now they're going to Joseph's house, and they think that this is a portent of their destruction, I guess.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
He says they went up to, so they go to Joseph, and they're like, so the first time we came here it was to buy food, but when we opened our sacks, we saw that you would return the silver. Now we have more silver, plus that we have the silver that you gave us back, or the silver that we thought we gave you, and then more silver for more grain. We don't know where that came from. And Joseph said, don't worry about it. The God of your father has put that treasure back in your bags.
So Joseph doesn't say that, does he?
Oh.
That's the steward.
Is that right? Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, the steward says, it's all right. Don't be afraid. You're God, the God of your father. So he may be a slave. He may be a slave. He may be an Egyptian that's just being, because Joseph has such a high status, it might be an actual Egyptian that's working for him instead of a slave. But regardless, all we know is it's not a Hebrew, because he doesn't believe in the same God as them. So why would he say, like, it's your God that has done this? Especially if he's the one that put the silver in there at Joseph's behest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get that.
Maybe he was given that charge by Joseph. Like, this is the ruse. Does he know?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it seems explicit, but he would be doing whatever Joseph told him to do. So I could easily see Joseph saying, hey, when they come back, tell them this. But I don't understand the point of saying it. Mm-hmm. Especially like, it makes more sense that we know Joseph's behind it, but they don't. So they're sitting there, and the steward is saying, your God provided the silver for you. I don't know. It just doesn't. I don't grok it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So they have prepared Joseph's house. They let the brothers have heard that they're going to be they're going to be have a feast prepared. The steward brings them inside, washes their feet, gives them fodder for their donkeys.
He doesn't wash their feet. Like, it's a nitpick, but he gives them water so that they can wash their feet. He doesn't do it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So right. It's less of an honorific. Like, they might still be expecting to be caught.
Oh, okay. Very good. I like that. And so when Joseph came about, and they gave them all of the gifts that they had brought, and Joseph got right to the point. He said, how's your aged father? Is he still alive? Is dad still alive? And they said that our father, who's your servant, is still alive and well. And then they began to bow. And he said, he sees Benjamin and says, this is your youngest brother. Is this the youngest brother that you told me about? And blesses him and says that he was so moved by the sight of Benjamin that he had to run and find a place to weep.
Yeah. The way he acts there is a little bit weird to me. I get the instinct to cry. You're moved to tears. Especially having children, I've come to intimately know that feeling. But he says, is this your youngest brother? He's still feigning that he doesn't recognize him. And he says, God be gracious to you, my son. What is that about?
Yeah.
Again, they don't know this is Joseph. So why would he be invoking their God to them in that way? And at that time, I'm missing something. I have to be.
And then, so Joseph doesn't want it to look like he's been crying about it. So he goes and washes his face, has a servant serve the food. And this is interesting. They give him, they have him eat separately from his brothers and from the rest of the Egyptians, right? I'm assuming that that's the normal custom, that regardless of the brothers. Yeah. But
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that that's not performative for the brothers. That's how it always is, because he's a Hebrew. So like there's still a distinction. There's still a class distinction happening there, even though he's in charge of everything. It's considered an abomination or whatever they call it. It's unclean or whatever.
But it kind of implies that they're hiding it as well, because they served him by himself and his brothers by themselves. So
exactly,
he's not even eating with them, and it's maintaining this ruse that hiding his identity from them.
Yeah. And then 33, the men had been seated before him in the order of their ages, from the firstborn to the youngest, and they looked at each other in astonishment. Is that because so when 34, when portions were served to them from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone else's, so they feasted and drank freely with him. Is there astonishment at Benjamin's portions, or is it because they had order of their ages?
I was just going to say, I think it's because of the sentence order, and granted, this could be a translation thing, but that happens in the sentence where they're seated in order. So I think they're astonished that somehow they've magically been seated in this order. I think they're astonished because of that, and it kind of lends this idea that they still don't know this is Joseph. Because if they knew what was going on, then they wouldn't be surprised by the seating order. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's kind of what I was thinking. And if you have it handy, can you tell me what it says on, say, the Catholic version of 34 when it says they drank freely with him? Because I feel like based on the Hebrew Bible that the NIV is being a little...
But just the wording is a little bit different. The NIV says, when portions were served to them from Joseph's table. But it says he served them a portion taken from his own table. Like Joseph is the one that's doing the serving. But the portion he gave to Benjamin was 5 times larger than that given to the others. Then they drank with him until they were lighthearted. So they were a little
tipsy.
They were,
yeah. And so whenever Rashi discusses this, again, this is not my interpretation. He says that this is the first time they had drank. This is the first time Joseph's ever consumed alcohol, and the brothers had not consumed alcohol since they sold him. I'm not sure if there's any significance there, but this is the first time for Joseph to even try this thing.
Of all the things to read into it, dude, where is that coming from?
I mean, I'm sparing you from a lot of the crazier stuff.
So, I mean, do you think he's just going, deep down the rabbit hole and thinking about this stuff, or is there other sources that he's referencing? And
there are sources. So there are sources on this website for Rashi's commentary that are just in Hebrew. Like I don't know what it is.
Right.
But yeah, it's all there's a reference point for everything.
Yeah. Okay.
Except for
give me 1 sec. Okay. I just didn't want that to interrupt.
No problem. Okay. So Joseph, so we're moving on to chapter 44. Joseph tells his steward, fill the sacks with as much food as they can carry, put each man's silver into the mouth of his sack. So maybe the silver is in a sack and they're putting that sack into a sack into this. Yeah. Okay. Along with the silver for his grain. And Joseph did as he said. And he did as Joseph said. They were sent on their way with their donkeys, and it wasn't far before.
Well, but also the cup goes in there.
Right. So yeah, you're right. And he
It
said, then put it.
specifies it's a silver one.
Yeah,
So
you're right. Put my cup, the
yeah,
silver cup. Yeah.
that it talks later on, I think verse 5, about it being a divination cup.
Huh.
Um, and so this definitely like wouldn't have been just a silver cup that's also for divination. Like it's silver because it's important. It's
Right.
not, he didn't choose it because it's expensive, because it's silver. This has significance.
Yes. Yes. Very good. Yeah, you're right. He said, so, but put my silver cup into the youngest one's sack along with the silver and grain. And then, so they set the donkeys off on their way, giving him a bit of a head start. And then he said to his steward, go after them. And when you catch them, say, why have you repaid good with evil? Basically, like confuse them and ask why they have the cup in their possession. This is a wicked thing you've done. He catches them, says that very thing. But we're not reminded, they don't repeat it here. They just say, the text
True.
says, yeah, they say, he repeated these words to them again, probably because these are the words of a man and not necessarily divinely inspired. This is all part of Joseph's ruse. This could lend some credence to a theory, the lies that he's telling, but he kind of understands what he's getting at. He's like, I see what you're doing here, Joseph. So anyway, he asked them, why have you repaid good with evil? And they said, why does the Lord say such things? Far be it from us to do anything like that. We even brought back to you the silver that was in our bags. We're not trying to steal from you. If you find the goblet amongst us, we will put that person to death, and the rest of us will become your slaves. And the steward said, okay, well, whoever has it will be my slave, and the rest of you can go. How's that? He's like, I'll meet you halfway.
No, that's not the way I read it, because
Okay.
of the way it's written. He's like, very well, it will be as you say. The person who have found it will be my slave, and everybody else can go free.
Yeah,
that's what you said, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's not what she said. That's interesting. I didn't think about that.
So then it says each of them lowered their sack to the ground and opened it, and the steward began to search, and he's doing it in a performative way. He's going oldest to youngest. That might have also been the custom that, you wouldn't start with whoever's standing nearest you or whatever. You had to do it in this order, but for whatever reason, it is a performative thing. He's going through oldest to youngest, knowing that the last one is going to be the one to have it.
I like the idea that there are so many customs and so many traditions that even whenever you're accusing someone of being a thief, you have to like search their belongings in a certain way.
Well, that's the way it is now. If you think diplomacy and stuff, the whole thing going on with Israel and Palestine right now, since we're talking about the Bible, you've got people that are very upset with the United States position on supporting Israel, but you have to realize that there's all these treaties. There's, you're looking to the future. There's no morals in this at all when it comes to diplomacy. And this is essentially diplomacy. These people are their own group. They're separate. They're insular. They're a part of these peoples in the area that they're living amongst, but they're not a part of those peoples. You know what I mean? So this is very much a diplomacy kind of thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, they've got to maintain that to, maintain their status and shit.
Man, that is awesome. I like that a lot. Good. I like that. Okay, so as you were saying, he's doing this performative ritual of like going through all of their bags.
Yeah, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack, which I still love. I hate to, like I said, extend this podcast, but I love the fact that the mom's dying breath was like, call him Benoni, and Israel's like, nope.
Yeah. I love you and everything, but I already had a different name planned for him.
Benjamin just sounds a little funny. Or not, Benoni sounds a little bit funny. I like Benjamin better. It sounds better to my ear. I like it. Anyway, so they tore their clothes, loaded all the donkeys, and returned to the city. So I don't know how far away they got, but tearing of their clothes is a ritualistic Jewish thing for various things, for mourning and whatnot. And they're probably mourning their future, maybe. I don't know exactly how that works, but it specifies that they tore their clothes and then they went into the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was performative in a certain way.
Yeah, I think it kind of has to be.
And so, so they return to the city. They realize that they've been caught, right? They're like, I mean, what else can we do?
And they had to have been close too, because Joseph was still in the house. It says not that he was there, but
Hmm.
still there. So they couldn't have
Yeah.
gone that far.
Yeah, it doesn't say how soon.
Hmm.
Well, it just says that like as morning dawned, the men were sent on their way. They had not gone far from the city. So they literally say what you just said. They hadn't gone far,
Okay,
and they
yeah.
were stopped by the servant. And at the same time, I'm wondering what the mindset of some of these brothers were like, because they knew that there was something foul afoot whenever they on their first visit, their first trek back to Canaan from Israel or from Egypt. And here they are, this thing happening again. They're like, man, this place is just, let's get out of here before something bad happens, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're taken back to the house. And Joseph, like you said, Joseph was still in his house when Judah and his brothers came in. Very interesting that they would single out Judah, because Judah's already
Well,
put himself in the line of fire.
exactly. That's what I was about to say. I think that's calling back to that for sure.
Yeah.
And again, the thing with Joseph and his father, he says, the rest of you go back to your father in peace. He would know, I think, that they can't go in peace necessarily because this has happened. Again, with this diplomacy kind of thing, if you think about it, he's got Benjamin, or at least he's going to have Benjamin. He's going to keep him, and then the other ones can go. Um, you know, this is not going to be seen as just, they're not going to just be like, okay, got it, my bad. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And he's not thinking of his father at all,
Hmm.
like not in the slightest. He just
Yep.
wants his brother.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's. I'm gonna try to keep that in mind. So yeah, and so he said Joseph asked Judah. He's like, what were you thinking? And Judah's just like, well, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do to prove our innocence. We've been caught red-handed, and God Himself. He's recognizing that like this is beyond him. Anything he's done. He's like, God Himself has uncovered our guilt. We are your slaves, and it says we ourselves and the one who is found to have the cup. And
Mm-hmm.
Joseph said, he's like, I just want the one who has the cup. And the rest of you go back, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And Judah, that's when Judah, he realizes like kind of I'm not sure if this is when he realizes, but he's like, okay, let me seek your counsel. He's like, he tells him what his father said. He's like, look, our father, this is his chosen son. He's already lost his first son. I have already promised him that if he doesn't come back, I will put myself to
Mm-hmm.
shame for it. So I'm offering you the same deal. Let me sacrifice. I will serve in my brother's stead. Do not, please let my brother go back, lest my father go to an early grave. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And again, so this is the second instance of Judah being willing to commit himself to be sacrificed for Benjamin. And the reason why I want to bring that up is because, as we either know now or will soon know, Judah is the patriarch of Jesus's line. Jesus eventually sacrifices himself, or whatever, becomes the sacrificial lamb for all of humanity.
Is that the same Judah? I don't
Yes.
remember that specifically.
Yeah,
Okay,
Judah.
because there's another Judah that's important that's coming up in the next book.
As far as I
So
know, I
I
think
wasn't
so.
positive.
Judah and Tamar are the
Okay.
progenitors of Jesus's line, and
Yeah,
that's
I mean, like I said, I've read the Bible before. I've forgotten most of it, but I definitely did not pay that much attention to the genealogies the first time around.
yeah. If I didn't have this timeline of the Bible book, I wouldn't have known that. But
Yeah, yeah.
but I'm
I still need to get that one. That's the one.
doing that thing that Christians would do when they read into this, saying like, "Oh, here's the clue. Here's the messianic clues set forth." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This and the donkey thing later. Okay, so yeah, and he's like, if the boy is not with us whenever we go back, my father will die. So let me serve in his stead. And let's see, how can I go back to my father if the boy's not with me? Do not let me see the misery that would come on my father.
Okay, where are you reading that from?
That's the end of chapter 44. That's 33.
Okay. You're farther than I was because I was looking back. In 26 says we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us, and I was
Mm-hmm.
curious if you thought that meant, like it says here at the end, that they just don't want to see the misery, or that the first time I read it, I kind of thought it meant he will be in such grief that he won't be the father that we know. You know what I mean?
Interesting. I'm willing to grant a lot of poetic license with this book, with this project, and so like I like that works for me. But at the same time, Judah is the one that explained the story of their first trip to Egypt to Jacob, his father,
Mm-hmm.
and in so doing, he basically described it the same way. He said, the Lord of the land will not see us Well, we won't be
Mhm.
allowed to see him unless our brother is with us. And now he's saying, unless we bring our brother back, we won't be allowed to see his face. We won't be allowed to see our father's face. So it could be literally that thing. It certainly wouldn't be the poetic version of him seeing Joseph saying, we won't see, or maybe it is. What if it is a poetic version of Joseph, like a more metaphorical version of, like, we won't, if we don't bring Benjamin with us, he will not be revealed to be our brother. If he'll still be just the lord of the land, the guy who's in charge of
Could
Egypt.
be.
And I think I just unlocked the Bible. No, but
It's one of those things you can take it so many ways, you know.
mm-hmm.
I did want to point out that I thought it was interesting in verse 31. It says, you know, Israel, Jacob will die if, you know, Benjamin's not returned. But in the Catholic version, it says he will go down into the netherworld.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so
Yeah.
neat. Let me look at what the Bereshit says. When he sees that the boy is gone, he will die, and your servants will have brought down the hoary head of your servant, our father, in grief to the grave. Hoary is Hoary. Just means
Yeah.
that means gray, right? Isn't that what
Old and decrepit.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Aged.
And that brings us to the end of 44, unless there's something else you wanted to mention.
I don't know what to take about that netherworld comment. It's
Yeah.
interesting, and I'm going to have to think about it. I've been doing so much other stuff. I haven't really had time to think about this stuff further than when I'm going through it and making notes to begin with. But I don't know what to make of that at the moment.
Yeah. I wonder, like, I have so little knowledge of how the differences between Catholicism and other versions of the belief in this stuff. But it definitely, because it's so specific, the netherworld, that's a thing that, I mean, I don't know if we're supposed to draw our own conclusions or if that's a thing that's been defined previously in the Catholic version of the OT.
Yeah, I don't know. And I don't know because we haven't gotten to there yet what the netherworld is to the Jewish people. You know, like we don't have any indication of that in the text.
Yeah.
So it's a new concept.
Yeah. Okay, so we're moving on to 45. 45 is where Joseph reveals his ruse. He's takes the cloak off. He's like, he says, everyone get out of here. He's like, let me talk to my brothers. This is after Judah basically, he's like, look, you know, I'm willing to stay in Benjamin's stead. Our father is old and decrepit, and this is how it can't proceed the way that you've led us to.
Yeah. The text says, so there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. So it sounds like this is, again, I'm not going to say this is actually something that happened, but at the very least, it seems like there was another story that was pre-existing, that was known to at least some people, and they're trying to justify this is why they were alone. You know what I mean? Like it might have been ambiguous to begin with.
Well, if I may, so what Rashi has to say is that he didn't want his brothers to be embarrassed. Like they've been subjects to this ruse that's taken however long it takes to get to and from Egypt from Canaan twice or 1.5 times. And they, you know, all the emotions that are tied up with the fact that they thought they were going to be enslaved and all this stuff. He's going to tell them about the ruse, but he didn't want them to be embarrassed in front of these
so what do you think? He feels bad now after doing all this? This is set in motion by his hand, and now he's going to spare their feelings. Does he have a change of heart, or, you know, like this can't have been the end goal that he wanted.
True. But at the same time that he's revealing himself to be his brother, you couldn't do that without also revealing that you have all these pent up emotions. And part of that would be like, hey, this character I'm playing, it has been played by your brother, and as such, I'm casting off all the other remnants of this ruse, and here it is, you and me. Like I wouldn't want you as your brother now want you to be embarrassed in front of these people. As the Lord of Egypt, you guys can pound sand.
Yeah. So do you think his ultimate goal was just to get Benjamin, and then this emotional outburst kind of led him to letting them know or whatever?
No,
or do you think it was his intention the whole time to embarrass his brothers and get his whole family, and he just had a change of heart in the process? I don't know.
Well, let's think it through. So he didn't know about Benjamin. Well, he knew that Benjamin existed, and he knew that these were his brothers. But it wasn't until he realized what Benjamin meant to his father that we even mentioned that Joseph even mentions making Benjamin part of the plan. So at that point, he's like, "Oh, I see." He's like, "Okay, well, here's what we're going to do: bring Benjamin back." And I'm wondering at that point, does he have all of this figured out? Does he know how it's going to end, or is he just like playing emotional games with his father? Is he trying to manipulate these guys?
if that's the case, then it definitely sounds like he's trying to be manipulative and trying to embarrass them. So
Yeah.
I don't see that necessarily, like, if he's either can't be the case or he had to have had the change of heart. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
That's a good point. Yeah. Good point. Because
It doesn't
otherwise, yeah.
specify.
How could he have gone through all of this without that being the case? Yeah, I'm not sure. Because as far as like wanting, when you say wanting Benjamin, do you mean like to see him again, to like enslave him, and what do you mean by wanting Benjamin?
It seemed to me that, like I said, because I talked about how he hasn't mentioned his father at all. He might have loved his brother, his little brother. You know, he grew up with him. He would have been closer to him than any of the other brothers. So he might have just wanted him to come. Hey, I'm a big deal in Egypt. Come celebrate with me. You know,
Yeah,
I
and
will
I know
be
firsthand how
part of my
crappy our
house.
brothers are.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
I
a good
think
point.
that was probably what his goal was. I don't think he cared anything about his father, even though at this point he's about to say, "Is my dad still alive? Because you haven't told me." You know, I think that he just wanted his brother. That's the way it comes across to me.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I hadn't even considered that. I hadn't thought about how, like, what his motives might be for wanting Benjamin there, other than just pure emotional manipulation of his brothers and potentially his father once he figured out that his father revered him so.
Yeah, see, it's possible, but I can't see that. You know, knowing my nature as a human being and knowing that everybody's essentially the same. You know, we have our differences, but we're all people. We all have the same kind of, you know, makeup. I can't see him necessarily wanting to embarrass these people. I think he just wanted his brother. He
Hmm.
didn't give a shit about everybody else.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? What happens, happens. You know, this is how I'm going to do it, and it's going to embarrass him in the process. So what? I just want my brother.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. I'll have to reread whenever we go back and then do our review of this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to keep that in mind. That's very good. Did you want to continue with the summary?
Where were we?
Oh, good
I'll
question.
totally read it. I just lost place where we were
Yeah.
because I scroll up and down to pick things out as we're talking. So,
Yeah.
um,
I think we're pretty close to the. I think we're on verse 3. Let's see.
I'll back up just slightly. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and
Yeah.
Pharaoh's household heard about it. And I don't remember if that comes into play again or not.
Hmm.
If it, you know, affects Pharaoh in any way.
Hmm.
Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" So again, this is the first time it seems that he's genuinely curious about his dad. He's asked about it a little bit, but I think he was doing that in furtherance of getting his brother.
Hmm.
Again, that's the way it just came across to me. And now he's acting like he's concerned about his father.
Hmm.
And then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they did so, he said, "I'm your brother Joseph." So the translation things could be that, you know, this is a word for word repeating and it just didn't come through in the English translation. I'm not sure about that because it's just so close. He says, "Hey, I'm your brother. Is my dad still alive?" And then he gets close and he's like, "Hey, I'm your brother." Yeah.
Yeah. I got you.
"I'm your brother, the one you sold into Egypt." Like, everybody's here now except for the one guy that got sold into Egypt. Who else would he be?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Exactly. I'm your brother. And they're like, prove it. They're like, Dinah? No, these
No,
guys.
I'm over here.
Yeah, she's back. She's back at home. Who knows where Dinah is? We don't give a crap
Are,
about her anymore.
are you Reuben? I'm Reuben.
Exactly. Where's Dan? Well, we're all accounted for.
Back here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll quit with the jokes, but yeah. I don't know. It just seems weird. I'm your brother, the one you sold in Egypt. Now I've told you twice. Don't be
Yeah.
distressed and don't be angry with yourself for selling me here, because it was to save God or save lives that God sent me ahead of you. So he's saying now that it's God's will because of this, you know, famine and the storing thing, that he's saving lives while gouging them.
Hmm. Yeah.
Which I think I could be wrong, but I think you know, with both the Jews and the Arabs and even like the Zoroastrians up in Iran and the whole area, I think all of that has prohibitions about gouging people. Like, you can have slaves, but you can't charge too much for them. Kind of, you know, I don't have specifics in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that that's the case, and it seems weird that it wouldn't be what's happening here. But
Hmm.
I guess he is saving lives because of this, and it's odd that he's just now calling that, you know, to the fore. There's been
Hmm.
no mention of it other than saying what happened,
Right.
you know, but the intention was was not there.
Just to kind of step on the gas a little bit. He
Yeah, sorry.
no, that's not you, man. It's us, and we're coming up on an hour and a half, and so on and so forth. So anyway, he basically the Pharaoh he goes to the Pharaoh, said, "These are my brothers." The Pharaoh's like, "Fantastic. Here's what we're gonna do. Load up the donkeys with all kinds of provisions. Tell them to come back here." He's like, "We will take care of them." He's like, "We don't need to keep making this dangerous trek for grain every so often, right?"
Yeah, I was thinking, didn't he go back with more than just provisions?
Oh,
Didn't they
yeah.
send?
This is just a plan. Yes.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah.
so the Pharaoh has all these ideas, and he's like, "All right, cool." So he loads up the guys with what they asked for, plus 10 additional donkeys, if I'm not mistaken, full of all kinds of stuff. He gives Benjamin 300 shekels of silver, and basically says, "Tell Jacob, tell our father, get everything and bring it down here." And if I'm not mistaken, he says that, oh, he's like, don't quarrel along the way. He's like, no arguing.
Yeah. So my question though is, why is he sending them with all these gifts? Like, you could make an argument that he's trying to send them as like evidence of what's going on and
Yeah.
prove so that Israel comes back with them.
Yeah.
But you would think just, hey, Joseph's down there. He says, "Hi, I want you to come down," would be enough.
Yeah.
If he loves his son this much, find out he's not actually dead. He's just been in Egypt this whole time. It just seems odd.
Yeah, it does. But also, evidence is a good idea, because like to prove that they are in Egypt, there will be some foreign things that they bring back among the gifts. But also, I think, is a sort of a celebration, saying like, we met our brother, and here's evidence of the plenty that you're being asked to come join. Like, he wants you to grab everything and come down here. Here's evidence of the things that you'll find there.
Yeah, but it's not going to be plenty according to this prophecy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. I guess if nothing else, then just to save them from the trip so many times over the course of the next 5 years.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I could see sending them with dates and pistachios and apricots or whatever else, so that you have decadence on the way there and back or whatever. But the gifts of silver and things like that, I mean, I guess they need money on the road, but I don't know.
Yeah, you think you're just unnecessarily. And
if you're a small band of 10 people loaded down with tons of riches, that makes you a target traveling through the desert too.
It absolutely does. Yeah, no, you're right. So they make it back to Jacob. They make it back to Canaan, and he's like, "You're not going to freaking believe this. Joseph is ruling all of Egypt." And maybe that's why they return all these things, just to say like, "Look, this isn't a crazy story, but here's all these pounded beans. Here's all of this."
I mean, whatever. I guess, but again, it just seems like I moved to North Carolina. Would I send my kids back to Texas to bring my mom out here and send them with a U-Haul full of shit so that they can bring back 2 U-Hauls full of shit? I don't know.
But he also sent back among the donkeys was like a carriage for his father to ride in. So it's
yeah. I also have issue. I don't know if you've moved on since you weren't reading it directly, but Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers, do this, load your animals and return to land of Canaan, bring your father and your families back to me. I will give you the best land in all of Egypt, and you can enjoy the fat of the land." 2 things. My ass didn't have, Pharaoh's not going to say that. Pharaoh's not going to, doesn't matter how awesome Joseph was, he's not going to say, "Hey, bring your family back and I'll give them the best that I've got." Like the very best that I've got, because this land that they have is the floodplain, where they're going is going to be the floodplain of Egypt, where even in the midst of famines, supposedly not this one, but there's always going to be food there because it always floods. He's not just going to do that. He's not going to give them that. I'm sorry. I can't believe that. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, so you can enjoy the fat of the land. Well, there's not going to be a fat of the land. He knows this. It's already been proven. They're already 2 years into this famine. People from all over are coming. There's not any fat on the land to enjoy.
Maybe just what there is for them to enjoy, they will get that, because as we're about to find out, Joseph is special. So maybe his family will be deemed special too, or he's sort of exalted to the same level of gratitude that he's been given.
I can see that. I'm not as incredulous about the enjoying the fat of the land bit. Obviously they would, I could see the Pharaoh spoiling them up for Joseph's sake, but I just can't see, the Israelites being given the best of the land. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Okay. So, and Jacob's convinced. So he's like, great. Load everything up. We're going to go and
Oh
see
no,
my
no, he
son.
doesn't
Oh,
say
what?
load everything up because it says never mind about your belongings because the
Oh, yeah.
best of Egypt will be yours.
Yes.
So he's
Yes. Yep.
telling him not to bring anything.
That's true. Yep. And, I had that thought when I was reading it that lest we forget, these guys are people of means. These guys
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot that they have earned and been given throughout their time in Canaan. These are the chosen people in the chosen land. And they're like, let's just leave it all behind because
That Okay, so that I had to stop and consider that. I think that does kind of make sense if you're looking at it from a modern theological perspective. It makes sense that that would be something that would happen. But I'm wondering, just because of the way that it's worded in the text, I wonder if it's just his, immediate family that's coming back on the assumption that they're going to stay here and enjoy, the fruits of what Pharaoh's willing to share or whatever, and then go back. And so the household is staying, but just the immediate family's coming.
mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Take some cars from Egypt and, for your children and your wives and get your father to come. Yeah. Could very well be. That's a good question. I'm not sure. Okay. So let's move on to 46. I kind of want to try to get Genesis wrapped up before
Yeah.
we adjourn. I'm not
I
trying to
would
do a
love to.
disservice. What's that?
I would love to do that if we can.
Yeah. Okay. So Jacob goes to Egypt. Let's get to 40. Give me a sec. 46. So Jacob. So they refer to him in the header as Jacob, but in the first sentence of the chapter as Israel. Israel set out with all that was his. And when he reached Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father, and God spoke to him that night in a vision and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am, Hanani. He's like, you have my attention.
But why is God calling him Jacob? He's already been told twice directly by God that you're now Israel.
Yes, indeed. I have no clue. And so let me see. Rashi says that the repetition of his name is an expression of affection.
Okay.
He said, don't be
Fair
afraid
enough.
to. So again, this is God telling him. So you could have interpreted Jacob's willingness to leave the land that he has been promised and that his forefathers had established as a sort of a rebuke of the promise that God made him. But here's God saying, don't worry about that. Go ahead and go. I'm with you, and Joseph's own hand will close your eyes whenever, basically saying whenever if you're going to die there, but when you come back, you'll be looked over by the people who you love and who set this in motion. And then we basically get a list of all the people that they're taking with them. I think it numbered 77. Is it going to tell us this in the 66?
So I'm wondering now this whole Israel Jacob thing, because verse 5 says Jacob left Beersheba and Israel's sons took their father Jacob.
That's so strange.
It makes me think there's got to be some significance to it, something that we're missing.
I wonder if, okay, how about this? What if verse 5, and Jacob arose from Beersheba and Israel's sons carried their father Jacob. I wonder if the sons of Israel aren't the sons of Jacob, but the people of Israel.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I was just about to say, I wonder if Israel is not a name, but a title.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Basically,
that would make more sense.
Israel is the name of, say, I'm just spitballing, but Israel is the name bestowed upon Hebrews who have entered, who are receivers of the covenant or or part of the covenant.
Yeah, and Jacob would be the patriarch of this group, the founding member, so to speak, of the nation of Israel.
Yeah, that's fair.
That I could see that.
Okay, so
I don't know.
Anyone watching or hearing this, let us know if two atheists just cracked the code. Like,
stop screaming at your monitor and tell us.
Yeah. Please, we just want anyone to say. Like, it's so funny because the Rashi, there's interpretations and translations under every verse except for 5. Okay, and on to 6. Like, okay, okay, so they took all their livestock, or on 6. They took everything.
Yeah, just one last thing before we move on.
Sure.
This is definitely God setting up the Israelites to be slaves.
Yep.
This makes it abundantly clear that this is God's plan.
Yep.
For this to happen.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Why he's like, don't worry about it. Go ahead. And this is part of the whole plan.
Mm-hmm.
Great point. Let's see. Jacob sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph ahead of him to Joseph to get directions to Goshen, which is the land that the Pharaoh set aside for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, when they arrived there, Joseph had a chariot made ready, and went to Goshen to meet his father. Went to Goshen to meet his father Israel. Are we saying okay? And then it says, as soon as Joseph appeared before him, he threw his arms around his father and wept for a long time. We're essentially saying when he says met his father Israel, are you and I kind of now on the same page that we're referring to Jacob is there, but so is all of the people that he represents, that Israel represents?
I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
I'm sure that is the case, that all of Israel was there. Everyone that was considered Israel is there.
Mhm.
But it says his father Israel. Let me check this. What the other versions that I've got here? Yeah, Israel, his father. Yeah, it's. I don't think it makes sense that it could be the title. But just the way it's used is confusing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we're not quite there yet, and then it continues with all of the people that came. And then, so you're right. So here in verse 30, it says, Israel said to Joseph, now I am ready to die because I've seen that you're still alive.
Yeah, so I'm so happy I could die.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah,
He said, I'll go speak. Joseph said to everyone there that he's going to go speak to the Pharaoh and let them know that you guys have arrived. And they brought everything they own. They brought everything, including the flocks that they own and everything.
yeah. And so, one, how awesome could those flocks have been in the midst of this massive famine?
Exodus track. Oh yeah, true.
But Pharaoh said, bring your father and your brothers down, and I'll settle you. You can have the best land I've got, and you can live off the fat of that land. But then it says, make sure you tell Pharaoh that you're shepherds, because that shepherds are detestable to the Egyptians, and so you're going to settle as far away from them as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So you're detestable, but because of that, we're going to give you the best land. I mean, it's one thing if they were being sent there to work it, but being given it, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, such an odd distinction to draw whenever that's going to be the outcome.
Yeah.
Pause real quick. Gotta pee. All right, what did I miss?
So I wanted to go back just a little bit to this genealogy section. In verse 22, it says, these are the sons of Rachel who were born to Jacob, 14 in all. But that she had 2 kids, and then the grandkids. Are they considered also the sons? How does that work?
That's what I've read. Sons,
Okay.
Sons essentially mean sons-in-law.
Well,
Sons-in-law and grandkids.
Okay, I was about to say the grandkids, though. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
There was something else I remembered, but I can't find it to back up what I was gonna say, so I guess we'll just skip it.
There, to that question that you had a second ago, there was something I can't remember who said it, or if it was even in the if it was in the Bible proper or in something I was reading, but they said that I think Judah was mad at Tamar, maybe I forget. Someone said something like, "This is a." They were saying this isn't your son or something, and he rebutted, "Are not the sons of my sons my sons?" And this just kind of keeps it's in keeping with that. But again, I at this point I've read so many different things that I can't remember what was actually from the Bible and what was commentary. So okay. So 46 ends with, like you said, Pharaoh letting the Hebrews know how they should refer to themselves, right? So that there's no mistaking them for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Joseph letting, so that they want to make sure that Pharaoh knows that they are shepherds, so that they will be put in the place away from the Egyptians that detest them.
Gotcha.
Which just happens to be the best place.
Yeah,
exactly. The Egyptians don't want it.
Yeah, why is no one there already? You'd think it's just too fertile.
It's where all the livestock are. They don't want to be any. Well, actually, that kind of might make sense if it's the livestock that's not the people tending it, but they just don't want the pig farm next to their house.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it does stink.
That makes sense.
All right, well, I think that's a good place to end it. We'll pick up on the next episode with 47 and go through the end of Genesis. And so that being the case, I just want to say thank you all for joining us in this discussion. Feel free to let us know what thoughts you have. We're at Eating the Apple on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. And until next time, I'm Jeff.
I'm Chris.
And this has been Eating the Apple.